Hi everyone, my name is Sara Young Wang. I am a Lyme disease warrior, as we say, and I have contributed a story of my journey to getting a diagnosis for Lyme disease with the woman who runs ItsLyme.com, Chelsea, and she's asked me to do a short video reading out the story that I contributed so that those of us in the community who are having difficulties reading or staring at screens, which was definitely part of my own experience, have an easier way of getting information. So if you find myself looking down, that's because I'm going to be reading. And I have my computer open here next to the camera. So I'll begin. Towards the end of graduate school, I was extremely tired. I initially thought it was just from the intensity and pace of school, but then the fatigue got quite bad. I got a job after graduation, but at work I felt like my body was shutting down and I had a hard time pushing through the day. Anytime I wasn't at work, I was exhausted and sleeping a lot. I went to a doctor who did notice my thyroid was underactive. I went on thyroid medication, but never really felt back to my normal self. I still felt pretty tired, never having the energy that others seem to have for daily living. So I continued to see various medical doctors and alternative practitioners. I was constantly trying new doctors, practitioners, doing everything I could to find out what was wrong. It would take 2.5 years to finally get a diagnosis. Of the practitioners I saw, many would run a panel of basic lab blood tests, and when they came back normal, would say there's nothing wrong with me, and they wouldn't really dig any deeper into further testing. Others were able to correctly identify pieces of the Lyme puzzle, but no one was able to put it all together. For example, the naturopaths I saw diagnosed me with adrenal fatigue and hormonal imbalances. The doctors I saw could see my thyroid was underactive, and were quick to blame all of my fatigue on it. Another practitioner could see my immune system was being burdened by something. I followed the treatment recommendations of each, but there was never any real improvement. I continued on with my life as best I could, with fatigue and low energy being my main symptoms thus far. Then I went through a period, about a year, of very high stress. I believe the stress had an impact on my immune system, which caused the Lyme symptoms to increase. I began to struggle with even more fatigue, extreme anxiety, loss of memory, brain fog, heart palpitations, unexpected fainting spells, extremely painful periods, as painful as I would imagine childbirth could be, hypoglycemia, dizziness, ocular migraines, inexplicable weight gain, night sweats, digestion issues, and more. I decided to quit my job and focus on my health. I was sleeping 14 hours a night and could be up for only an hour or two in the morning before becoming so overcome with so much fatigue I had to go back to bed. I might have been out of bed for maybe only 6 hours a day. The fatigue was, and still sometimes can still be, so bad that even breathing feels like effort and something I have to think about. In my journey of going from doctor to doctor, I happened to see a functional medicine doctor, hoping that since functional doctors take a more holistic approach, that she might be able to make sense of all these puzzle pieces. I did not know at the time, but the doctor I saw and continues to see happens to specialize in Lyme disease. She didn't test me for Lyme right away though, and at first we focused on treating adrenal fatigue and trying to reduce my stress, because by now being so sick and not having any answers was extremely stressful. I would show up in her office, sort of a crying mess, but when I wasn't improving, she began to suspect and test for Lyme. There are 2 specific Lyme tests she's done with me, iGenex and iSpot, and both came back positive for Lyme. There are also other lab tests that are associated with Lyme, such as HHV6, VEGF, C4A, and CD57. All of my results for these tests were or are abnormal. In addition, I also have low levels of vitamin D, DHEA, and cortisol. I have improved a lot from when I was first diagnosed. However, I still experience many symptoms and don't have the energy of a normal person. One of the greatest things I have learned from this is to listen to my body. For me, my illness was my body saying no to the life I was living. And when I listened to it, the body does have a remarkable capacity to heal. I'm very grateful for finally receiving a diagnosis and to the practitioners working in the Lyme community. They don't give up on their patients despite this illness being so challenging to navigate. So at the end of the story, there is a breakdown of my symptoms, so I'll just read that out very quickly. So my first onset Lyme symptoms are fatigue, low energy, and my sensation of my body shutting down. Do I recall a tick bite or bullseye rash? No. Diagnosis before Lyme disease, adrenal fatigue and hypothyroidism. Chronic Lyme disease symptoms: extreme fatigue, extreme anxiety, loss of memory, brain fog, heart palpitations, fainting spells, extremely painful menstruation, hypoglycemia, dizziness, ocular migraines, weight gain, digestion issues, night sweats, and breathing that feels like effort. A Lyme disease and co-infection is diagnosed by IGeneX and iSpot, and then also the HHV6, VEGF, C4A, and CD57. All right, thanks for listening, and I hope that helps, and I wish you all the best in your journey.